Eve shared the story of Jeanne, a woman in the Congo who'd been the victim of rape as a weapon of war and economic conquest. If Jeanne had a husband or brother or son or any males in her life, we don't hear about them. Her village was attacked by militants and she'd been raped. She sought help for her injuries at an NGO active in the area and received surgery and treatment, after which she returned to her village, only to be tied to a tree by these militants and repeatedly raped for a period of 2 months. When she was released, she found her way to another NGO and received 9 surgeries to repair the damage to her body. It was then that Ensler, founder of the $85 million V-Day charity, found her recovering from her surgeries and her trauma and asked her what it was that she wanted. What do you want? What do you need? What this woman, Jeanne, wanted was a village where women and girls could be safe from violence. This village, City of Joy, was built in part by Eve Ensler's charity. It was outfitted by Google with computers and internet. It's a place where women and girls can be safe and heal, learn and grow, and become empowered. In Eve Ensler's words, become the future leaders of the DRC. And I just want to make it clear, I have a huge amount of sympathy for that woman. I would have a huge amount of sympathy for anyone who had suffered the things that she's suffered. It disgusts and sickens me when I think of what human beings can do to each other. And if I hadn't swallowed a red pill a long time ago, I'd have probably been thinking exactly what every other woman in that room was thinking. As it was, knowing what I know about such things, all I could really think as Eve was talking about the plight of women in the Congo was, if it's that bad for women and girls, I can't even imagine how it must be for men and boys. There aren't a whole lot of mainstream venues discussing male victims of wartime sexual violence, but I did stumble across a recent documentary on BBC Radio, and I've collected a few other sources that I will link in the low bar. A lot of them have to do with not sexual violence against men, but gender violence in the sense of men being the primary targets of any kind of genocidal violence that tends to happen around the world, from Kosovo to Russia, during World War II. It really is mainly men who are targeted for that kind of thing. As one researcher said, basically, in his researches, he's found that brutal societies are brutal to both men and women, and that any society where rape of women is an arbitrary thing, the killing of men is going to be just as arbitrary and just as prevalent. So the BBC documentary reporter interviewed a Congolese man whose family was attacked by uniformed men in 2008. He was bound hand and foot and beaten for 3 hours, during which he watched as they killed his entire family, including his 2 children, before cutting off their heads. Then they left him for dead. In 2010, he was attacked again by men in uniform. He believes they targeted him specifically after discovering he was still alive after the first assault. They took him, they bound him and blindfolded him, drove him in a van to a barracks where there were other prisoners. While there, he was sexually tortured and raped for a period of 4 or 5 days. He says he was semi-conscious for most of it, sort of in a dissociative state. Then they loaded him into a van and drove him out into the bush and raped him again. And at that point, he asked them to kill him. And he says they just laughed and left him lying there. When a passing car came across him, he asked them to drive him to Kampala, Uganda, where he was interviewed. This is a place where thousands of displaced people from DRC seek refuge. Other male victims interviewed and examined have been forcibly circumcised, raped with objects like screwdrivers, castrated, even had their genitalia completely amputated. Unlike the woman Eve Ensler spoke of, there's really no heartwarming story of healing and triumph for any of these guys to share. Not one surgery, let alone 9. No city of joy built for them and furnished with computers provided by Google, where they can heal and learn and be trained and get back on their feet. No charity that deals with their problems. In fact, when interviewed, this man said that his injuries are not healed and that he would rather die than live. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, 22% of all men in the Congo, compared with 30% of women, have experienced sexual violence as a weapon of war. When you consider the higher rates of general victimization of non-combatant men and boys in conflicts like the one in the Congo, where it's at least 2 to 1, and their higher mortality rate, I really don't know that these numbers are 100% accurate. It really can't be determined by surveys like that, whether men who were killed experienced sexual violence before their deaths. So the men who do survive almost never speak of their experiences to anyone. Under the law, they are guilty of a crime, the crime of homosexuality. They are as guilty as the perpetrator, and they can face punishments just as severe. They don't typically disclose to family due to justifiable fears of abandonment. One employee of the Refugee Law Project says it's common for a woman, upon discovering that her husband has been raped, to pack up the children and leave him. Is this a woman? Is it a man? If he can be raped, who is protecting me? According to Dr. Lynn Lowry of Harvard Medical School, one of the authors of the JAMA's study, reaction within the academic, political, and humanitarian communities to that study on male rape in the Congo has ranged from shock to puzzlement to controversy to anger. She really wasn't prepared for the level of hostility to their findings on the part of humanitarian NGOs. Not anger on behalf of male victims, but anger over the public being made aware of them. Dr. Lowry herself was shocked not just by the prevalence of male rape in the Congo, but at the level of female perpetration. Some 40% of the sexual violence against women in the Congo and 10% of that against men was perpetrated by women. Those findings defy the cultural narrative, both that of patriarchy and of feminism. The UN, the law, traditionalism, and feminism all view rape as something that only impacts women and girls, and something that is only perpetrated by men. According to Lara Stempel of the University of California's Health and Human Rights Project, out of more than 4,000 NGOs reviewed, only 3% even mentioned the experience of male victims, and none did so as more than a passing reference. I have to wonder if any of those NGOs mention female perpetrators at all. And while Dr. Lowry sees the resistance of NGOs and others to address male rape victims as originating in a fear that resources will be diverted from their chosen issue, that essentially male victims will take too big a piece of a finite pie, I think it is deeper and more complicated than that.